Hello and welcome to the Beyond Biotech podcast, and this is number 31, and we have a theme this week, and I don't mean the music. I'm Jim Cornell from Labiotech, and nothing really happened this week because it was all work and all rain, and a whole lot of interviews, many of them from companies enjoying the nice weather in Florida. And that's because Phacilitate's Advanced Therapies Week took place last week in Miami Beach, Florida. We did some interviews from there which do have the occasional technical difficulties and a bit of background noise. It would have been so much better for me to have been there, and so much warmer too. And so this week we have a few shorter interviews from the event as we speak with the organisers as well as some of the companies in attendance. So our guests this week are Kim Barnes, EVP of Phacilitate, Kathie Schneider, Director and Global Commercial Lead at Terumo, Vered Caplan, CEO of Orgenesis, Ivan Wall, Head of the Centre for Advanced Therapies Manufacturing Training at the University of Birmingham in the UK, and Natalia Elizalde, Business Development Director at VIVEBiotech. And now it's time for the news you may have missed over at Labiotech.eu. I managed to get the two videos I made in Belfast online, the first an interview with the CEO of Phion Therapeutics and the second a look at what research is taking place at Queen's University in Belfast on antimicrobial resistance. Cytoreason expanded its deal with Sanofi to look at inflammatory bowel disease. A university has received funding to develop new motor neuron disease therapies, and Ubiquigent and the University of Glasgow in Scotland are going to collaborate on drug discovery. The first leukemia patient has been dosed with Smart 101. A newly discovered mechanism could lead to new therapies for alcohol-related liver disease, and there was a milestone announced for gene-edited therapy for sickle cell disease. Sysnav and Roche are partnering on movement tracking technology. The first patient has been treated in a type 2 diabetes clinical study, and Japanese mRNA research may lead to new treatments for lupus. We had an article on the future of telehematology, a new spray can fight antibiotic resistance, and Orbsen Therapeutics is encouraged by its interim diabetic kidney disease study results. The FDA has cleared a revolutionary approach to J-pouch issues. HKU Med says T-cell exhaustion factor drives cancer immunotherapy resistance, and you can read all of these and a whole lot more at Labiotech.eu. And so let's get to those interviews. Phacilitate's Advanced Therapies Week took place last week in Miami Beach, Florida, and we spoke to some of the companies while they were there, as well as the organisers. So first we'll get an overview from those organisers, Phacilitate, in an interview during the event with Kim Barnes, Executive Vice President. If you can give me some of the impressions of how the event went this year.
Yeah, of course. I've heard so much incredible feedback. We had the awards last night, and that was the first time that we launched those. And actually, the feedback from them was great. We finally have an award industry that focuses on cell and gene specifically. And we celebrated the progress and success of each other. And I think, we're all human and we like celebrating those successes. So I think that was a real highlight. And that got, really, really, really positive feedback. It's quite emotional as well. Obviously, we had Dr. Carl June doing the Lifetime Achievement Award, and we put together a video for that, and that was quite emotional. And then we did a dedication to Simon Ellison as well, who passed away a couple of years ago. But he did shape the supply chain part of the industry, so we've dedicated an award for him next year. So that was also quite an emotional part of the evening. So I think the awards definitely, I think the event as a whole, I think everyone's just really shocked at how many people are here. I think for me, I actually got quite emotional on the day one when we finished all the build up and everyone turned up. I've been with Phacilitate 9 years, and actually 9 years ago, the event was in a small basement of a Washington DC hotel. It was tiny, and that was in line with the industry. And I think the reason I got emotional is because actually this industry has grown so much in my 9 years that I've worked in it. And actually, I think the growth of the show and how many people are here, as well as the, how many exhibitors are on the show floor, for example, that just shows how much this industry, we're no longer a small niche industry anymore. We're here, and I think we're a big part of biopharma now, and that made me really happy to see.
Do you get people coming in from all around the world?
It's about a 70% US audience, around 20% Europe, and then the rest Asia. But we would like to increase our Asia attendance, and I think that's something we'll be working on over the next 12 months, because I think this is a global event, and of course it's primarily US because it's in the US, but of course we want to increase our global attendance.
Is it something that you envisage taking to different continents?
Yeah, so we do have our Europe show, which is in Lisbon in September. We've had a lot of people, when they've been on site saying, we'll see you in Lisbon. So I think that show is going to be great. We launched that actually in 2016. We had a 3-year gap because of COVID. So I think that's going to really come back with a bang. I think the industry, like I said, has grown so much in those few years post-COVID and obviously pre-COVID. And I think the Europe market has its own unique challenges. And that's why we launched Advanced Therapies Europe, because we talk specifically about Europe. We have European speakers, but of course we do attract a really large US audience to that show as well. It is the main market for cell and gene therapy, and people are very interested in how to operate in the European region. It does have its own challenges with a fragmented landscape. And of course, Advanced Therapies Asia could be on the cards. We are looking into it. I think that's going to be a couple of years in the making. We do need to make sure, when you work in Asia, I'm sure you know this, but we need to make sure that we've established partnerships before we go out there. I think you can't go it alone. So that's something that we are working on. I think our first real play into Asia is going to be increasing the Asia audience at our European and US shows first, and then build upon that for maybe launching something in a few years.
At least you're picking lots of nice warm weather places anyway. You've got Miami and Lisbon, so...
I think the Phacilitate brand is about the destination, because I think everyone's human, everyone wants to have a bit of fun, and that's why we do the yacht party and we do things like that, because actually you make the best connections when you're in just an informal networking setting or in a really nice place like a destination. I think people relax a little bit and they do make some really great connections, and that's what the Phacilitate brand is, and that's why we choose destinations. So I haven't decided where in Asia yet, but it will be a destination.
Do you have other events other than Advanced Therapies Week?
Phacilitate specialised only in advanced therapies. We made that decision in 2016 actually, where we were doing a range of events. So we were doing vaccines as well as big data, and they do link in with obviously advanced therapies, but we decided to be specific to advanced therapies. Again, it's a strategic move to only have the 2 events. Maybe we'll have a few satellite events as well, like maybe smaller dinners and things like that. But the reason being is, I think if we can focus on these 2 events, we can make sure that we put on the best show for the industry. And it's important for them to have that point in the year where they can come and make sure that, they have that really important week for doing business. And that's what Miami is.
And what format does it take? Is it primarily conference, or is there networking, exhibitors?
We've always called it a conference, but it really is. The exhibition now is much, much bigger, again, in line with the industry growth. So we have 180 exhibitors this year, and there's a lot of them that have got bigger stands. So the exhibition is a huge part of the event, but we also have 6 content tracks. So it is a conference. We call it a confec. So it's like an expo and a conference in one. We've basically got everything. We've got the network, and of course every night we have something. So we had the exhibition opening party on the Tuesday. That's where we celebrated the new tools and tech coming into the industry. The Wednesday was the yacht party, so we took everyone out around Millionaires Row and got them on a boat for 3 hours, and that was a bit of a party, which was very fun. Seeing people think scientists can't party, but put them on a yacht in Miami and you'll see a different side to them, which is great. And then of course the awards dinner as well last night. So yeah, we do have a really good mix at the show, and I think there's something for everyone as well. So we always make sure that we're putting something on to be inclusive, so from the network into content, obviously, as well as the expo.
Has the content changed over the years as the industry's grown?
A theme that's come out of this year is the patient-centric development. I think that's more core to the event than ever before, and I think that's the way that the industry is moving. So obviously really putting the patient at the heart of your development, whether that's your commercialization, your manufacturing, or your clinical. I think it's always thinking about the patient from, the very early stages rather than just the end goal. So I think that patient-centric development theme has really come through. Even the, the progress I've seen in content, even from the clinical side, so obviously the types of things we're talking about now. I remember, I think one of the session titles about 5 years ago was something like, can we actually ever have allogeneic cell therapies, right? That was one of our session titles. And now we've just got an approval for one about a month ago. So I think when you actually look at the agendas over the past, we used to have content that, is this actually an option? Can we ever get there? Are we ever going to get through these challenges? And actually what we're seeing more and more is, yes, we're there. And actually we're finding ways to get through the challenges that we've always focused on in the agenda. So I think this year we're definitely seeing more positives coming out of the industry and more solutions than ever. And that's really exciting.
It seems that this is something that you're kind of looking towards how this benefits patients and also kind of how it is moving forward.
Absolutely. I think with content, and that's like the importance of the content here, is you could say, this is what we do or this is where we are. But I think the important thing is you have so many key opinion leaders and just people that, real experts in this industry that are on the speaker panel. Like if you've got them all in a room, we should be talking about what can we do to change this? How can we move forwards? What have we learned from the past? And that's why we always say, a case study is the best way to present, because obviously giving someone a case study of like what we've learned, we've gone through this process and we've learned X, Y, and Z, this is what we should be changing. Because I think as an industry, connection as well as the partnerships is so important, because we can't move forward without learning from each other, those connections and those partnerships, especially in such a nascent industry. Although we're growing, we're still at quite a nascent stage.
Is there any kind of like actionable items or people trying to move things forward?
At the core of this event is manufacturing. So obviously, our purpose at Phacilitate, or our mission, is to help every biotech on their commercialization journey. And a big part of that is manufacturing. So I think, a lot of the conversations this week has been about how can we lower cost of goods? How can we move things through the supply chain? And I think actually that's where these therapies from a clinical perspective, we're starting to get there. We're starting to, have proof of concept and prove the scientific side, but actually where the real challenges lay in this industry is definitely in that commercial side, the manufacturing side. And that's going to help us lower cost of goods, which will ultimately lower, the cost of therapies per patient. And we can't be putting therapies out there at $3.5 million per dose. That's just not possible. Patients, we will not be able to, as an industry, we cannot sustain that. So I think that's where the manufacturing and the commercialization really comes in. And that's what we're really focused on. How can we really get those price points lower through changing our manufacturing and through the tech? And we're seeing so much great tech coming through. Every year there's so much tech coming into this industry, and I think finally the technology has caught up with the science, and we're starting to see that, and maybe over the next couple of years that will actually play out in terms of lowering costs of goods for patients.
That's really good news. As far as the event itself and moving things forward, are companies starting to make announcements or launches at the event now?
Oh yeah, I wish I had the exact number, but I could easily say 30 launches at the show. I think this is the place where people do launch new tech. We start the year for the industry in January. This week in January is a kickstart to the year. It's a kickstart. It is a place for people to launch their technology. So we've had multiple tech launches at the show. We've played tech demos, we've filmed tech demos of the new technology, and obviously on LinkedIn.
Does the same kind of thing happen in the one in Europe?
Yeah, I think Europe is of a smaller scale than Advanced Therapies Week here in Miami. This is obviously our flagship show, but in Europe, the difference is that we focus on Europe. So anything that's, we want to celebrate the progress happening in Europe. I think Europe gets a bit of a rep sometimes because of the challenge in regulatory, the challenges in reimbursement. I know, but obviously we are getting approvals. I know it's a challenging market to work in because it's so fragmented, but at the Advanced Therapies Europe, we do focus absolutely on all the success and all the great stuff that's coming out of that region. And of course, tech is part of that. I wouldn't say we have as many tech launches in Europe, but I think that show is going from strength to strength. And actually, I think this year we'll probably see way more tech launches than we've ever had at that event as well. And they're probably going to be European specific tech launches.
So when do you start on the next one?
I started on the next one 2 months ago. The funniest thing I get on at an event is, oh, what do you do all year round? So I was like, trust me, this show takes about 15 months to plan, but we already started planning the 2024 show a few months ago. That's more with me. And then I've got an away day with the team in early Feb, and that will be when we start really digging into next year's show.
Next, it's Orgenesis, and Orgenesis is a global biotech company working to unlock the full potential of cell and gene therapies in an affordable and accessible format at the point of care. And we chatted with Kaplan, CEO of the company.
All right, how's the event going so far?
Well, it's very busy here. Nice to see everyone running about happily. And also a lot of young people. It's nice to see.
Yeah, definitely. We can start with a bit of background on Orgenesis, if you could tell me what the company is and what you do.
So we've been in the space of cell and gene therapy quite a long time, over a decade. we were very, I think, fortunate and lucky to come in at an earlier stage. We used to be one of the largest CDMO in this space. We used to own MasterCell, if you remember that company. We sold it to Caplan about 3 years ago. And the reason we sold it is that, we felt we've kind of grown it to a certain capacity, but we were very limited in expanding. And I think that tells the story of the entire industry in a nutshell. Wonderful therapies, huge demand, and just very limited capacity. And when you want to kind of grow capacity, you hit a wall because you need to build more clean rooms. Takes a long time, can take you 2-3 years. You need to train people, get more regulatory approvals. Even doing a tech transfer internally in your own company from one place to another can take 6 to 9 months. We just said, no, we have to find a different way to provide this industry with a platform. And what we've built is what we call our point of care platform. So what we've built are hubs all over the world, in Europe, in US, in Asia, in Israel. And these hubs, we put in all the quality assurance, the quality control, the training, incoming supplies. What we don't do in these hubs, we don't actually manufacture the product. So we work as an industry partner, as a service provider, and we partner with companies or hospital chains who are developing cell and gene therapies. We've got a strong focus on autologous therapies, but not only. And what we do is we integrate their therapies into a platform. And that platform is the point of care platform. The quality system, the training, everything is standardized across all hubs. The actual processing of the cells, the actual supply of the cells, we do in our Orgenesis mobile processing units and labs. We call them affectionately ampules. And these ampules are about container size. And inside of them, they have a very high-grade clean room facility, but they're not just pods. They have inside a lot of kind of isolation units. So you can do parallel processing. You've got a lot of automation around them. And what we've tried to do with this platform is bring together as many industry players as we can to adapt it to one platform. So not every developer or every company who has a new therapy has to kind of invent the wheel, but they're all kind of being standardized. I like to compare it to if you're developing an algorithm for an iPhone, right? You don't go out and build your own iPhone, right? You work on an existing platform. And that way, the industry capitalizes on each other's advancements.
You said that you were sort of one of the first companies in the space. It must have changed quite a lot.
It has actually. It's changed. You know what's changed? First of all, when we started, there were maybe like 5 to 10 clinical trials going on. Now there's thousands. So the scope of the industry has changed. Also, in the beginning, like there were no companies developing automation. There were no companies developing media. There were no companies developing. Now, it's kind of a joint effort. You have all these participants, each of them developing their own technology, their own capability. And the great thing about this is that you've got, a lot of advancements, but you still need to integrate it all into one platform, right? If everybody's kind of doing his own thing, it doesn't really help. If you kind of make sure that everything is being synchronized so it can all work together, then you're getting value.
How have you managed to stay ahead? Because obviously when the sector grows, more people come into that sector.
So one of the things we've done is instead of trying to compete with other companies, we've tried to take a collaborative approach, right? If you're a new tool manufacturer, let's see if we can integrate you into the platform. If you're a new media developer, if you're a new quality control system, that's what we really try to do. We try to integrate all these different players, and this way we're always kind of keeping kind of ahead, because whatever any new innovation comes up, we invite them to join us and work with us in supplying solutions. That's kind of what we see as our role, right? And because we don't sell equipment as an equipment, like because we're not directly competing, we do what's best for the customer, right? We do what's best for the therapy developer. So we try to be agnostic, and we just try to make sure there's high quality, and we can also help these new kind of innovation builders have an access to market. This way we can actually be a way for them to enter the market in a clever way, because we can introduce them to what the market needs, give them feedback, work together with them to supply solutions.
I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about the deal with Metalmark Capital Partners and splitting your services division and what that means for your platform going forward.
Sure. We had agreements with certain hospital research institutes that had asked us to kind of license their products and work with them in making these industrially available. You know, that was very satisfying for us to be able to do that. So we licensed in and we licensed out, because our goal, again, we're not a therapy or marketing company. We're an industrial partner. But a lot of our focus, and most of it, was actually working with third parties. And even after we've licensed out, I mean, it's no longer our therapy. So we had a lot of activity with third-party kind of therapy developers. And we built this platform that we think answers the industry's needs. And we wanted to make sure that as a service provider, we could grow together with our customers and expand. We were more or less kind of maintaining the business at its existing capacity with our existing customers. But to really advance, especially in the US, by the way, we really wanted to, because we were more focused on Europe and Asia, Middle East, and in order to expand capacity and make our platform available for biotech companies, research institute, anybody that wanted to work in the US, we really needed more capital. So we took the service division, which is really our service platform, utilizing the point of care platform that we've built, the hubs, the ampules, the technologies we've incorporated, and we put that under a separate umbrella. And Metalmark were kind enough to come in and do a lot of due diligence, and were very open-minded and realized that we do provide a very needed solution in this industry. And we need to grow quickly. So I'm very appreciative of the investment, and I think it'll be great. And this year our focus is really to advance as much as possible in the US. We already have great collaborations with UC Davis, with Johns Hopkins. We've got hubs in other locations, such as in Natick and Boston. But to really implement the ampules, and by the way, we already have US-based customers, but we've been working with them more outside the US. So in order to really expand our capacity, our services, both for external US companies, like European companies who want to work in the US, and US companies, I think it's important. That's kind of the goal of this investment, right? To allow us to expand capacity, especially in the US, and allow us to provide this platform in more locations across the US.
As far as Advanced Therapies Week goes, how is that going and why were you attending?
It's a chance to meet new customers or new partners. It's a chance to make sure we're updated on all the latest technologies. And it's also a great chance for us to meet with the different companies we collaborate with on different tools and technologies. I mean, there's a lot of great lectures, updates on what's going on in the industry. And it's also, you know, it's just great to meet. I mean, we've known some of the people working here for years and worked, you know, some of my team worked in other companies. It's just, you know, it's like the Big Bang. It was a very small industry and suddenly it became a bigger one. So like everybody knows everyone. There's still a lot of networking, connections. It's part of the fun thing of working in this industry, that it has such a collaborative approach and everybody kind of knows everybody.
Has it been useful so far?
Oh, yeah. I've actually met a lot of interesting companies, seen some new technologies, managed to catch up with a lot of people I needed to. So it's been very exciting.
Terumo is a global provider of medical technology based in Tokyo. It started out as a Japanese thermometer manufacturer, but now its portfolio ranges from vascular intervention and cardiosurgical solutions, blood transfusion and cell therapy technology, through to medical products essential for daily clinical practice, such as transfusion systems and diabetic care. We talked to Kathie Schneider, Director and Global Commercial Lead at Terumo.
Terumo Blood and Cell Technologies is a company that focuses on kind of the value of blood and cells. So we've been known on the blood banking as well as the apheresis and collection side for quite some time, and then recently have probably right in the last 5 to 8 years ago stepped more into the cell therapy space and are continuing to strengthen our capabilities in the autologous cell therapy space. We have the leading collection services for cell therapy as well with our Spectra Optia device.
What's currently happening at the company? I mean, what are you working on right now that you're talking to people about at the event?
We're really excited in that our positioning is for cell therapy is about how we can help elevate customers' processes. So when we did an environmental review of the market, we started to look at where most of the challenges lie. And the two areas that the challenges for cell therapy lied were in cell expansion as well as on the fill finish side. And so for cell expansion, right now in the launch of our Quantum Flex bioreactor, which offers a process development scale as well as a clinical scale bioreactor that overall simplifies the expansion process. So not only can they scale from process development into manufacturing, but they can also have fleet management control through and remote alarms and things that they're going to need as they think about commercializing, so they get the data they need as the product is working through the expansion phase. So we're in the middle of that launch and we're very excited about how that's progressing. The other device that we have is the Finia fill finish system, which is a dedicated system for autologous cell therapies. Most of our customers are doing a manual fill finish, which exposes the product to that last mile to a lot of risk. And so with Finia, we've now automated that from the DMSO edition to sealing off the bags so that they can get into the freezer so they can get to the next stage of their process.
What are the benefits of that for the companies that you're working with compared to previously?
A lot of our customers today are still using manual processes in various aspects. And so we're looking for different ways to connect the process. So on the cell expansion side, we don't have to have a seeding. You can go right into the bioreactor. Most of our customers have to do some type of a seeding density. So they have to expand in a smaller vessel before they can move to their larger bioreactor. We've removed that type of a process in that you can start with a small volume or small amount of cells and go into that clinical volume. So that connects that process. And then as it goes through the process, when you get to completion of the expansion, it is in a smaller size, so you don't have to go through all the media to get to the cells that you're looking for. And so that also streamlines the process and makes it easier on the cells as well. On the fill finish side, like I said, many of our customers are doing this through a manual process that exposes them to a lot of risk. They're sitting in the hood as they get their final leukopak after the harvest procedure and are having to aliquot with basically with chilled bags inside that BSC. We have all that chilling that takes place that's very controlled. We control the addition of the DMSO, aliquot it into separate bags, and then seal those bags for them. So it's pretty much set up the kit, let the system run, and then take off the bags after we've sealed them. So we've even take out the air of the bags and seal those bags for the customer.
So that must be quicker and more efficient as well as better.
It's definitely quicker, obviously more efficient where you've got multiple people working through that. And like I said, the risk for error increases as you're working through the various syringe processes and managing multiple containers. So it simplifies that process and reduces the risk. Like I said, you've gotten that dose all the way to the final side, which is a very complicated process. Why fall down at that last mile, right? So, you can finish with Finia makes the process much easier. And like I said, with Quantum, I also can monitor and manage my therapies much easier through Quantum, as well as scale my therapies as well. Because right now there's not a lot of process development tools in the bioreactor space in cell therapy because you're dealing with something small. So we've now gone back, created that version, so that also eases the process as the customers are still doing their product evaluations into their clinical scale.
Is it easier for customers to use as well? I mean, do you have to train them on anything, or?
We've got a great user interface that helps guide customers through the cell expansion process. And Finia also has a fairly good user experience as well to help guide them through. So that makes it easier, especially when they start to use the system even on their laptop, right? Like I said, we have fleet management, so I can now see what's going on with all my systems. I can do a fleet deployment of a protocol with the bioreactor, as well as I can monitor system alarms that may be occurring, which sometimes, it just occurs for different types of areas, temperature, or if there's a run challenge or something. So that way you're not having to always be in the clean room and you're always in there managing, but you can get to the problem right away and know the severity of the issue before you step in.
How's the show going or the event going in terms of getting that message across to your current customers and potential customers?
I think it's going quite well. I mean, we're talking about elevating customers' processes, finding ways to reduce risk, finding ways to make the process simpler and easier. And I think a lot of our customers are looking for the newer technologies that are out there. There hasn't been a lot of alternatives in fill finish technologies. There hasn't been a lot of alternatives in bioreactor technologies. And so I'm very enthusiastic by the getting from the group of wanting to try and explore the technologies that we offer, because I believe that they are the right technologies to help them basically manage their risk and ease their process.
VIVEBiotech is a Spanish developer and manufacturer of lentiviral vectors to treat a range of disorders, including hematological and solid cancers and rare diseases. It's based in the beautiful northern city of Donostia, or San Sebastian, and we chatted with Natalia Elizalde, Business Development Director at VIVEBiotech.
We are VIVEBiotech. VIVEBiotech is a company fully specialized on lentiviral vectors. We are a CDMO, so contract development manufacturing organization, working on the development of vectors from early stages, and also the manufacture of vectors under GMP conditions for clinical trials, and now being prepared up to commercial stages, always along both FDA and EMA regulation.
Are you a global company?
Yes, we are working globally. Indeed, at the moment, 100% of our customers, they are located abroad. Approximately 70% of our customers nowadays, they are US-based. Then approximately around 20% they are European-based, and also we do have some customers based in Australia or Asia. So this reinforces the fact that our vectors are being shipped globally. Also that, of course, we are working in compliance with both FDA and EMA regulations. And finally, that we are continuously fulfilling regulatory documentations, both IND and IMPD, and therefore fine-tuning our manufacturing process according to global regulators' feedback. So yeah, we are global from this point of view.
Could you tell me what your products are used for? What kind of companies will be using your products?
So our customers, they are mainly biotech and pharmaceutical companies that are developing both a cell-modified gene therapy product or even a gene therapy product. So nowadays, we are working on lentiviral vectors that are being used for therapies such as CAR-Ts, NK-TCRs, NK CARs, the transduction of tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes or IPCs, among others. But also importantly, the vectors that we are producing, they are being used in vivo, which means that the vector itself is the final product. And this is a very interesting field, which there is a clear trend to be, increased and increased. So we are working at the moment also for 5 programs in which the vector is being used in vivo as a final product.
I guess there was a little bit of most recent past, there's been a bit of a bottleneck with viral vector supplies. I wonder how that's going and whether that will improve in 2023.
From my point of view, this is something that will be improved because obviously more capacity is being built. What we are making towards this direction is, that we moved last year to a new building. Okay, so we've been working in the field for 8 years, and last year we moved to a new building with increased capacity, up to 80 GMP batches per year, 7 clean rooms and so on. But even more importantly, what we are continuously working in is in having more and more productive processes. giving great relevance to the optimization of both upstream and downstream processes, and therefore the productivity of the same batch size reactor is giving lentiviral vector to treat more patients. This will be the key in the future if we really want to give answer to this bottleneck, and also, very importantly, to make these therapies more accessible and more cost effective. So yeah, we do have a good slots availability at the moment, and this is something that indeed we want to keep in the future, because we think is the only way to give a good response to our ongoing programs and the ones coming in.
As far as cost effectiveness goes, is that something that's improving?
We are working on that a lot indeed, and we think this is something that is improving and needs to be even more improved. For instance, in our case, we are working with a manufacturing platform coming from universals, whose advantage are several ones, such as the fact that intermediate skills are available to really adapt to what is needed for every phase, and this also contributes to cost effectiveness. But also importantly, the productivity per cell is higher, and this is contributed to the cost as well, and also is contributing to the purity of the sample, because you need less cells to produce the same titer. So yeah, and also of course working on the producer cell line to make it more and more productive, as well as on DSP to do it more like somehow directed towards the purification of the specific vector will be key.
Are there any other challenges in producing viral vectors at the moment?
Well, the challenges, something that is important to be working the coming months is in having more and more digitalized processes, automated processes, always thinking on commercial stages in which obviously reproducibility will be key. So this is what will be key for the next year. No? This is the important challenge nowadays.
As far as lentiviral vector manufacturing currently, how do you think that's going to proceed in the future?
That the demand will increase, mainly linked to the fact that it's being used for more and more applications. As mentioned, for instance, all these in vivo applications, both systemic or through different kind of administration routes. Also, lentiviral vectors are being used more and more as a vaccine itself. And it has been demonstrated to be a tool that is safe, that is effective, and that can somehow accommodate large genes. And more therapies with large genes are coming. So, what is expected, not just by myself, but in general, is that this field will be increasing. Yeah.
And as far as Advanced Therapies Week is concerned, what was your motivation for going to that?
As a company, we have been here for several years. I think that this is the fourth one, indeed. We know that it's very good. It's very focused on advanced therapies. There are dedicated presentations, like also very specialized on manufacturing, which for us is great. Our ongoing customers are coming, some of them, so we can have kind of follow-up meetings here, as well as potential customers, partners, technological companies. So it's very complete. And that's the reason why every year in January we are coming here to Miami.
And now it's to the Centre for Advanced Therapies Manufacturing Training, which is a newly established national training centre based in Birmingham in the UK. It is one of several centres that form the Advanced Therapies Skills and Training Network, which is coordinated by the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult. Its aim is to provide training to UK advanced therapy and vaccine manufacturers and to enable rapid and sustainable workforce growth. And I had a great conversation about training and VR technology with Ivan Wall, head of the Centre for Advanced Therapies Manufacturing Training.
You know, I come to this event every year, bar the COVID year when we weren't allowed to travel. And it's a really good meeting place, actually, to bring together predominantly sort of vendors and people developing new technologies. But it's really good to see what's going on out there and how automation is starting to come into the sector.
Could you tell me what the Centre for Advanced Therapies Manufacturing Training is?
We have the National Training Centre for Manufacturing of Advanced Therapies. It's based at the University of Birmingham. We're one of 3 training centres around the UK, actually, and it's coordinated through something called the ATSTN, or the Advanced Therapies Skills and Training Network. and that's coordinated by Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult. So the idea there is to have a number of training centres around the UK to help upskill and develop the talent pipeline to support the growth of the advanced therapies sector, particularly around industrialisation, manufacturing, and then clinical delivery.
All right. In terms of what you're doing, how do you design and deliver courses?
We run courses in a range of formats. So we have our in-person courses. So typically we run these over 2 to 3 days, and we basically bring delegates in and we provide training for them. So that's theoretical training for people who simply need to understand what are ATMPs and how are they starting to impact. But we also then provide sort of training on pieces of equipment with equipment providers. But we run sort of VR training. So we're training people using virtual reality. And actually, that's my other hat is I run a company called 4Plus. And 4Plus produce VR software for training in the life sciences. So we use that software to train people in things like GMP behaviours, so understanding how to get ready to go and work in a clean room, in terms of what that clean room looks like, health and safety, cleaning, gowning, and those basic behaviours that they need to understand. And ideally, if they've done it sort of hands-on before they go into the clean room, then they'll be more competent and more confident. So we provide that training within the National Training Centre as well. And then we also run online programs. So we have an app that people can access from their phone or their iPad. That, you know, we have 10 modules in that app, and it takes around sort of 6 to 7 hours to complete. But it enables people to learn using their phone, and they're swiping left and right and really interacting with the content. So it's a really good way of having people immerse themselves and learn with the content, but they can do that while they're on the go. So you can be on the tube or on the bus or the train and sort of be working with that without really needing to get your laptop out or be sitting at a desktop machine.
And this is for people that are already within the industry to upskill, or is it to learn how to do their own job better?
So it's a mix. We use it to train students who currently do not have really much in their curriculum and what advanced therapies are, and therefore they're really not sort of aware of what careers are available out there. So we're teaching to sort of target those markets. We're also teaching NHS staff, people like pharmacists and nurses who are more and more starting to work with advanced therapies in clinical trials settings, but then also now we're starting to see that emergence of these medicines in mainstream care. Again, for those people, when they did their training, they would not have received anything on advanced therapies, or would have been a very small component within an oncology or a hematology module that they may have done. So we can upskill people who are, doing those jobs, but simply haven't yet had the formal education in what advanced therapies are. And then we're also working with companies, people who are, onboarding in companies. We're looking at helping them to onboard staff better and giving them a more meaningful onboarding induction process and training process so that they can make the most out of the training period.
Is that one of the issues you were mentioning about the training within healthcare? Is that one of the issues that people get into a particular profession and then that's what they do and they don't necessarily upgrade their skills?
The sector's growing so quickly that we typically are bringing in people to grow the sector from other areas, biologics, chemicals industries, and so on. So they don't possess those skills, or they may have worked in a different company and were trained, but in a different way. So, we have this enormous workforce shortage in the UK. I think there's 10,000 new roles will be created within the manufacturing and industrialisation areas of the sector within the next 3 years or so. So we basically need to be looking at how we can train those people more effectively, more quickly and more efficiently.
I assume that you're constantly having to take into account new advances in the field because it is moving quite quickly.
That's right. And we're starting to see a transition towards automation and digital and analytics. And actually, the great thing about the virtual reality training that we do is we can create twins of those particular types of equipment, and we can generate data ourselves in new ways, data around how people interact with the machines, how people interact with the process. And that's a whole new data stream that we've never had access to within this industry, or even in biopharma more broadly.
You mentioned about all the new jobs that need to be filled, about training people that already have some background. Taking that kind of one step back, how do we attract people into the industry or make people aware of what the industry is? I'm thinking about schools and universities.
That's right. So I mean, it's a real challenge, and again, if you look at sort of school and college curricula, they typically won't cover things like advanced therapies because they're so new, so they haven't made it onto the curriculum as yet. One thing that we're doing is using VR, and we have a free piece of software at 4plus called Proteus. And that basically shows people a day in the life of someone who is working with advanced therapies. And we've been going into schools using that software. And we've certainly, when we have school visits to University of Birmingham, we've been putting headsets on pupils and showing them what these careers look like. So it's not just like a careers advisor or someone from industry going in and giving a talk in a school that, is quickly forgotten by the time the speakers left the premises. Instead, actually, we're providing this really immersive education piece on what advanced therapies are and what people who work with them do. And that will stay with those youngsters. So hopefully, we kind of, by having that grassroots approach, hopefully there'll be a funnel of talent that really sort of comes into the sector. And the other thing is as well, at the moment, people working in the advanced therapy sector have typically had a degree or a master's or a PhD. And I think as the sector becomes more mainstream, some of those manufacturing roles won't require those qualifications, and we will have a workforce that is more, sort of vocational, people with T levels, for example, which we're doing in England at the moment. And I think people doing T levels, for example, will really benefit from having access to the VR training. And we're already working with several schools now to provide that VR training for their T level students. So hopefully we can be attracting them into the sector.
What's the reaction like to people that are going through this training when they're using the VR? They must be kind of excited, I guess.
It does have a wow factor, and the fact that you put a headset on, you're standing on a piece of carpet in a training room, and when you put the headset on, you're transformed into whatever environment is loaded into the headset. And it feels extremely real. It feels, you get a sense of presence. The fact that your eyes, you can't see any of the room that you're standing in, but you're focused very much on that experience in the headset. And it's a really powerful way of training people and making sure that the learnings and the knowledge that we want them to gain are sort of more deeply embedded. I think for me as a university professor, the reason that I wanted to really move forward with VR is that it makes sense that we start to train people using more effective tools than what we've been using over the last 200 years.
Is that what you were doing at Advanced Therapies Week, was promoting the technology?
Yes, so I gave a talk yesterday in the Enabling Technologies and Digital Technologies track. And that talk was on the use of immersive technology, not to train people in schools now, but to train people in industry and to train them in a way that's more effective and that reduces the use of single-use plastics and reduces the cost of training people and ultimately accelerates the training path.
And that's it for another podcast. A busy week coming up because we have a special newsletter as it's World Cancer Day on February the 4th. We'll also try and have some podcast guests related to that subject too next week. Anyway, thanks a lot for joining us, and I hope wherever in the world you are that you have a great week ahead. Take care, and you'll join us next week for another Beyond Biotech.